So we'll see if we can get it going here. All right, we are live. Hello, everyone, and happy Webinar Wednesday to you. Thank you for joining us once again for an educational session from Lulu today. We're sharing one of our own, and I'm very excited about it. So, hey, everybody, thanks for joining us. Tom, thank you for kicking off the chat. Mick and Anne. Oh, Anne is in Paris. That is lovely. Tina is in Atlanta, which I'm sure is very hot right now. Oh, and Mick from Florida. Yeah, I'm sure it is very, very warm. I know that a lot of the country is experiencing summer. So I hope everyone is staying cool wherever you are. So I see that you have found the chat. So please drop in and say hello. Oh, Alex is from Asheville. Funny, my husband is on his way to Asheville right now to get a tattoo. So if you see him, wave. Anyway, hey, everybody. Thanks for being here. So you found the chat. Say hello. Tell us where you're from. We are here to learn about PR and how to use PR to build a buzz around your book. So if you have had experience with PR, let us know what that has looked like. Have you paid for sponsorships or placements? Have you run ads? Has it been traditional or a little bit non-traditional? We're here to talk about all of those things today. Also, let me know if you have any topic ideas for the next round of webinars. So July is wide open as of right now. I would love to hear from you. What do you want to learn about? Do you want to hear more about Lulu, our platform, what we have going on? Do you want to learn more about marketing or distribution, writing, the craft of writing, anything like that? So I am open to your suggestions. So please leave them in the chat. We also have a Q&A tab. So Sarah has kindly offered, I think you did. Are you okay to answer questions?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, all right. So at the end of the session, we are open for questions. So you can drop those in the Q&A tab. If you have to leave early or if you join late, we are recording this. It will be on our YouTube channel as well. So I will drop the link in for that. So I think that we will go ahead and get started. So as I said, you can see I am joined here by the lovely Sarah Gilbert. She is a wonderful part of our team, and I'm so excited to have her. She did this presentation a couple weeks ago, and I was so enthralled and thrilled. I asked her to come on the wider stage, the webinar stage, and share it with all of you. So Sarah is the public relations manager for Lulu, where she educates creators about the benefits of Lulu. And she's passionate about helping authors and publishers find ways to connect with their audience. In previous roles, she led public relations campaigns for over 75 authors and coached many more in preparation for their book launches. When not in the office, you'll likely find her in the bleachers of her boys' baseball games or cheering on the UGA Bulldogs. All right, Sarah, if you are ready.
Got to do the legendary bark there for any of my UGA people out there.
I was going to do it, but somehow restrained myself. So good for you. Go for it. So thank you so much, Sarah, for your time. I so appreciate you being here, and I will turn it over to you.
Great. Thanks, Chelsea, so much. Hi, everybody. I'm so thrilled to be here to share some insights around PR for authors. For anybody here who's launched a book, there are so many components to marketing. There's social media, there's paid advertising, there's paid social media advertising, search engine optimization, there's publicity, which we're going to talk about today, and other things that will fall into line today when we start talking about PR. Hopefully you'll kind of see a rounded view of how PR can affect the outcome and success of your book. So PR is just public relations, and a lot of people call it publicity. Basically the same thing. And we're going to talk about how you can build buzz around your book. So what is PR? We're going to talk about what it is. We're also going to talk about what it isn't. It's earned. So it really should cost nothing. And this is maybe one of the most exciting things about it, is that it's typically free. What it will cost is your time and resources and some mental energy to put all these parts together. It's also considered newsworthy to the source. When I say source, that means the media outlet or the reviewer or whoever is helping you get the word out about your book. It's relevant, to the media outlet, targets the general public. So typically nobody is off limits from seeing a publicity run or something about you or your book in the publicity. It also gives you a higher level of credibility, although the outcome cannot be controlled. And we'll talk about this right now. So if you think about maybe the last time you opened a physical magazine, probably doctor's office, unless you still receive them in the mail. So on a magazine, you might have on one side of a page an advertisement. This was something that was paid for. There is a picture that was curated by the company who paid for it. It says, it has a one-liner in general that says something fantastic about the product. That's an advertisement. On the other side, there might be an article, and within that article, who was written by a credentialed journalist or somebody of authority who works for the magazine, there might be a shout out about another type of product. Well, typically more credibility is given to that one where there's somebody who's an authority talking about it. So that's when I say a higher level of credibility is because your audience knows it was not paid for. It also means you can't control what's said about it, which we'll talk about as well. So there's a long-term goal of positive brand exposure and recognition with publicity, and it takes time and builds. So when you launch a PR campaign or strategy or put in effort to do something publicity focused, what happens is not like you just do one thing and results immediately come in. This is going to be something that builds, and it also is going to be something that you kind of might have to shift your strategy every now and then. It does work best for new releases when it comes to books because the media is interested in showcasing something that has not yet had any attention or it's new to the market. So you really should start working on your PR and your publicity strategy in advance of the book coming out. It's not necessarily all the time, but that's really what they're looking for. If your book has been out for a while, it doesn't mean you're dead in the water on this. It just means you kind of have to be a little bit strategic about where you ask for media attention. And again, I said there's no guarantees. So if we think about the new release thing, I want to talk about that for a minute. I'm sure in the guests today on our webinar and in this video, we have those who publish fiction and those who publish nonfiction. New releases for fiction are very important because what the reader is getting out of it, the value of that is typically emotion, entertainment, joy, whatever it is that you're saying they're going to get out of that. So something that's nonfiction, because this is usually information or expertise, there's a little bit more longevity in how much you can squeeze out of that lemon for a publicity campaign. For instance, so this year is an election year. Let's say somebody has written a book about the Electoral College. Well, it'd be a great time to start peppering that into anything that you can get out of it in the media, even if the book is old. So that's something where when I talk about new releases versus old releases, sometimes nonfiction will have more longevity with that. Let's talk about what isn't PR. So paid advertising, in that same scenario of a magazine, the reader understands that beautiful picture with the one-liner that talks about how fantastic that product is, the reader sees that for what it is. They see that as, okay, maybe that's catchy and that's interesting about that product or that good service, whatever. However, they know that that company had enough money and they're targeting readers in that magazine and it was paid for. You also have control of what's presented in paid advertising. You get to pick it out. You get to specifically target potential customers. And usually there's a short-term goal of immediate sales release. This is especially true in online media when you have lead generation or maybe social media advertisements, Amazon ads, anything like that is paid advertising. It does not fall under the umbrella of publicity. Doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. It's just not what we're talking about today. So there's different types of media channels and formats. This seems to be ever growing as well. Short form video right now on things like TikTok can be pretty positive. But traditionally, types of media are interviews. This can be written or on broadcast, book reviews, expert mentions, byline articles, awards, and then a press release is also a type of media, although those are typically paid for. And a little bit later on, we're going to talk about the necessity or maybe not the necessity of having a press release. So for channels, you've got newspapers and magazines for print, online media outlets, blogs. I mean, that is the biggest ocean we have right now of media. It does not necessarily have as much longevity as newspapers and magazines when it comes to being a significant piece that's sitting in the doctor's office or in somebody's coffee table or whatever. However, online media does have its certain perks too, where it typically finds people who are looking for things that matter to them. There's broadcast, radio, TV, and podcasts. Podcasts are one of my favorites, and especially nice because there's a lot of longevity with them. People listen to podcasts for expertise. They're especially good for nonfiction authors. And then events too. That could be a book signing. That could be something that, maybe you are writing a book about the best practices of a certain type of exercise, Pilates, for instance. If you want to go have an event at a gym, that would be a great place to do it. So there's a process here when it comes to the development of how you want to approach publicity and PR. First of all, you need to really dig deep and understand what's newsworthy about your book. And this isn't what you like about it. And this isn't really what, maybe your reason for writing it. This is going to be why it matters to others. So you have to develop your pitch. So these questions here, and again, Chelsea said these will be available on YouTube if you want to kind of get back to these and do some journaling around them, which I would highly recommend, is ask yourself, who is the book for? What are my readers going to get out of this? Are they going to get out of it a joyful experience for fiction? Historical fiction is one of my favorite genres to promote because they might get some fun history knowledge out of it too. What is significant about the book? Is there a backstory of interest? The backstory of interest sometimes is the main story. So this is especially good for children's books, or a book maybe that's self-help. Maybe the author went through experience that invited them to share their experience with others for self-help. So that backstory matters. For children's books, I once publicized a children's book written by two grandparents who had always wanted to write a book for their children and just kind of ran out of time and space in their life. So they wrote it for their grandchildren. And, there was a really fun backstory about that landed them some significant newspaper media attention. Are there any current news tie-ins? I talked about the one with the election before, but, this isn't always something that you can predict. Sometimes something happens in the media. You're like, oh, well, that's, my book is about that. You have to kind of jump on that if there's something that happens in the news. The ones that you can predict in this field are going to be annual events, holidays, things that are commemorative events. I'm currently reading a book that's historical fiction that takes place in World War II. So any kind of World War II commemorative tie-ins would have been appropriate to take the information about that book and attempt to get media attention with it. Are you considered an expert in your field or around the topic of your book? This is huge. And this is going to be something where it should help you make some headway in the media with your expertise. So more things about developing the pitch. Can you offer advice to others about the topics in your book? Somebody who is a social media expert could perhaps go to local media and do a, top 5 tips for parents who are allowing their children to have social media for the first time. So, when you think about your expertise, if you're able to offer advice to others, there are ways you can slip in this in a publicity outreach. What headway can you make on a local level? I kind of added this in because I think when people think about publicity, a lot of times your brain might go to really big publicity events. This is going to be the author who gets the Good Morning America interview. This is going to be the person who lands the article in the Washington Post, the Globe and Mail, the New York Times, whatever it is. Those are huge. Those are that's the big Cadillac grand finale version of a media hit. I urge you not to go for those right away. If you get one and land one, that's wonderful, but they're very rare and it takes a lot of time to get there. So if you can make some headway on a local level, start there and build off of that. You also really need to think about how you'd feel about a negative review. I don't know any author out there, even the most successful ones, who have experienced negative reviews. Do some research on how to reply to a negative review, or if you should reply to a negative review before having a knee-jerk reaction about one. And just always know that, like, as a consumer, when I read the reviews about something and I go in, if I see 5-star reviews and there are 2,000 of them, that kind of gives me a weird feeling like they paid for them somehow, or curated just the best ones, or maybe they had a way of going in. So honestly, some critical reviews are not always that bad. What possible questions would you like to be asked in an interview? These are going to be deep questions. There aren't going to be questions like, why did you write the book? Who was the book for? It's going to be something about the angles of the book. It's going to be, what advice do you have for parents who are introducing their children to social media? It's going to be something, if you think about a journalist asking you a question about you, your expertise, what the book gives to others, those are the questions you're going to want to go for. So let's talk about how you actually do this. So those questions that we just talked about on the last 2 slides are going to be the questions you really need to ask yourself before you can develop your pitch and talking points. So the next step is to write down your pitch, talking points, and possible questions for the media. Now, a pitch, what this means is this is going to be something that might be 3 to 5 sentences, at most 2 paragraphs, that talks about why somebody should be interested in your book. What sets your book apart from others in the same genre or in the same topic? And really why somebody should cover it. And my next bullet here, do I create a press release? This is a maybe. So a press release is nice if you're putting some major news out into the world, but there are millions of press releases released every day. It's kind of like the tree that falls in the woods. If you put a press release out there, people aren't going to read it unless it's brought to their attention, or if they're searching for something specific about it. However, I do like the idea of putting together a press release because it will help you develop what your pitch, talking points, and possible questions are. There's a lot of information on the internet about press release best practices. And if you kind of do some research and follow these guidelines, it will help you understand what you should be putting in front of the media who might potentially cover your book. So you do want to create a 1-pager. This is because there might be times where you mail a book out, and this 1-pager is going to include the following information. A picture of your book cover. That's not going to be the entire page. That might be a quarter of the page, or if it doesn't need to be, it could be smaller than that. Just the description, and this is going to be the description that you use on your book listing or the back of the book. Publication date, that's month and year. All of your metadata. Your metadata is your ISBN, your distribution source, your website information, maybe your social media handles, anything. Well, that's not really metadata. Metadata is all the information about the book, but all of the data about you as well should be listed there. Your contact information, phone number, email address. And if you have any advanced reviews that matter, don't pull the ones out from your mom or from your best friend, because of course they're going to say good things about your book. But if there's somebody who reviewed your book in advance, and this is going to be a review that matters, you could put a link to that if you're sending out a digital version, or you could take a few lines out of it, the best lines that you want, and also include it on this 1-pager. And this 1-pager is really so anybody who receives the book has all the information in one spot. You want to make it as easy for them as possible. So you want to document your outreach. So this is going to be a spreadsheet, a Google Doc, list media outlets. If you any contact information you have for them, do your columns up and list the dates that you reached out. What did you do? Did you follow up? So this is going to be where you track everything. And prepare review copies for mailing. So the way that publicity works when there's a book involved is when you reach out to somebody, you're going to offer them a complimentary copy of the book. So here's what not to do. If you send an email to an editor of a local paper and you say, hey, Mr. Editor, I am an author in your area, and I write a book about this cool thing that happened in this town 100 years ago, and I'm going to do an event for it. Buy a copy of my book here. You did great until you got to the buy a copy of my book, because that's salesy and it's not going to work. They're not going to spend money on it. They expect to get a copy for free. So what you would say at the end of that is say, would you prefer a complimentary printed or emailed copy of the book? And so review copies for mailing. If you are doing all of this outreach ahead of the release of the book, it's okay to have ones with an unfinished cover. You can just put a little advanced review copy sticker on it, or you could let them know this is an advanced copy. You don't have everything final yet. They're used to that. But you want to offer them the book. And so if they did say they wanted a printed copy, you want to mail them the book and the one pager and a cover letter. If they want an emailed copy, you can email them a PDF of the book or an EPUB. You can ask them if you want to be specific about format, you can. If they have a reader specific or device specific format they like. You could also have your one pager information either listed in the body of the email or attached. And then also it's nice to, in the cover letter, if it is a broadcast interview, so if you're approaching somebody about speaking to them on a podcast or a radio show, what you want to do is you want to put some of those questions down that you thought of that they could ask you. So like 3 to 5 bullets of like, this is what, here are some topics I can cover, and have it tailored to that audience. And so, if you have a wide subject you cover and this podcast is a little more specific, go ahead and get specific with those points. You'll have a better chance of them wanting to invite you on as a guest. So next, your outreach begins. So far what we've done is we've asked ourselves a lot of questions about how to do this. We have put together the materials to get ready. We've decided this could happen before or after a book launches, or both. You could decide to resurrect an old book that you've publicized and do this as well. So here's where this is probably the hardest part. So at the beginning, I said this is going to cost you time and effort, and this is where this lands here. So podcasts, you want to look for, if there's podcasts that you listen to that are appropriate for your topic, your book, a romance book podcast. There are a million podcasts out there. These are actually pretty easy to search for. Whatever podcast platform you listen on, like I'm an Apple podcast person, you just go to more info. You usually can end up on a website about the podcast, and there's typically a contact information there. Look for the producer, or if it's a small podcast, it might just be the host. Submit the topic with talking points, offer to send them a book. If you don't hear from them, follow up. Always allow somebody 48 hours, by the way. Some of these people won't get back to you for weeks. And on top of that, sometimes they won't get back to you for months, but they might get back to you, and that's kind of cool and exciting too. Bylined articles. So whenever you see an article that is typically information that is expertise about something, you'll see, Sarah Gilbert, author of the book about whatever. So this is going to be a way of indirectly promoting your book by putting your expertise out there. But because you are, maybe Psychology Today allowed you to write an article for them, and then, you're listed as the author, that's automatically going to give you credibility for your book. And it's going to be a way that you can promote that you were in a certain outlet. So that's great. A lot of times this is going to be for online media and newspapers and magazines. And in the footer of the website for these outlets, you'll see contact information. And from time to time, you will see where and who to contact for byline article pitches. Sometimes they want to see the entire article, and they want to know that article was not placed anywhere else yet. Other times they'll want to see a pitch about it. And they typically have a word count max for this as well that you'll want to adhere to. So a guest blog is kind of like a byline article, but it's a little bit more low key. So this is great for fiction. If you're a fiction and nonfiction, but if you're a fiction writer and you have fellow romance authors or fiction, whatever your genre is that you follow and you're friends with, a lot of times a guest blog swap is something that you can do that will show others your ability to write. as well as, introduce you as somebody new to them who they might not follow. And this is a great way to get coverage as well. Book reviews. You'll want to offer complimentary copies just like you would for anything else. And in exchange for a review opportunity, a lot of times you'll see book bloggers specifically online, and you can reach out to them if they write reviews for the same genre that you write in. You say, I have a book coming out. Here's the publication date. Here's more information about it. Would you like to review it? And they may say, great, yeah, send me a PDF or send me a free copy of it. Now, just because you do this doesn't mean they're going to review it. So first of all, consider that if they don't like the book and they don't review it, that's okay. It's going to happen. So it's better than writing a bad review. Honestly, some people say all publicity is good publicity. I'm still on the fence about that, even though I've been doing this for a long time, because when bad publicity happens, it doesn't feel good. So book reviews are something that you'll want to solicit. And it's great to start with something small scale on this. Don't go for the New York Times book review. Don't go for USA Today or anything major. Just start with reviews, get that social proof, and go from there. So events, readings and signings. We talked about this a little bit before. Explore what's local. Explore what matters to your audience in your book. Local TV interviews. I'm actually quite surprised when I turn on my TV in the middle of a day and it's that local station and it's a small, tiny little studio and they have a local author of interest. Honestly, I don't even know what the book is about half the time, and it doesn't matter to anything local. They love having local authors on. So don't be scared to pitch local TV interviews on a smaller scale in your towns for this, because they love to have the local author on. Live radio interviews. This is, FM, AM. It's a lot of talk radio and internet radio. The thing about live radio interviews is they're very fast. I mean, this is going to be 2 to 4 minutes max. So, just make sure that you're ready to go at that speed. And if you do land a spot on a radio, maybe dig out some old radio interviews from that host and station and kind of hear how that goes before you get on that. Those are typically live, and sometimes they're replayed. So let's say you start getting some traction with this. What do you do with it? So share it on social media. And if possible, share the outlets post. So, again, if you wrote a book about running and Runner's World covered your book in some capacity, maybe they mentioned it in a books roundup or reviewed it or wrote an article about an interesting storyline that you had about that. Share the Runner's World post about it. Don't share yours, or share both, actually. So, because again, it gets back to that credibility when there is a, media, somebody who's looking at it from a journalistic standpoint, that's going to give it so much more credibility than you just standing on the roof with a megaphone saying, my book's out, my book's out. Any snippets or reviews worth using in other places. So this might be appropriate if you have a review and somebody writes, a couple paragraphs, but that one liner that's just like, I couldn't put it down, best book of my life, whatever that is. It's like the banger there for the best review ever. Then that could be something that you want to put at the top of your website. Or maybe you want to revise your one pager, which we'll talk about that in a minute. So add it to your website. So as you start to gain momentum for media, you've probably seen on people's websites where they see like featured in or as seen on, and it lists different places. Or you may actually get to the point where you have a tab that's like reviews and media, where you can put it all in one place. Definitely do that. Revise your one pager if needed. And this is going to be as you get more reviews in, or if you do land something on a national level, you could put it in there as well. Add more media outlets to that was supposed to say list after that. So my point here was that if you land some media runs with this, then what you'll want to do is look where you're getting attention and revise your list that you're making of all the media. Go back to the drawing board and start over and brainstorm some more places. That list needs to be ever growing. And by the way, you're going to be crossing a lot of people out on that list too. If somebody responds, no, thank you, actually that's kind of a blessing because a lot of people just don't respond these days. So if you start doing a lot of outreach and you feel like you're reaching out into a black hole, you're not alone. People just don't reply sometimes if they're not interested. So don't look at it as something bad. If somebody says no, thank you, that just means it's something you don't have to work on in the future. Move on to the next. Also, you can use the momentum for future books. So if you are launching book 2 in a series, take the praise that you got for book 1 and the attention, and go ahead and use that and start your PR campaign for your second book 6 to 9 months ahead of time, and use that praise that you got to start building a list for your second book of where you're going to send it to hopefully get better momentum for that. So that is the end. I would love to hear any questions anybody has. So I'm going to pop over to the Q&A.
All right. Yeah, everybody. Thank you, Sarah. Drop your questions for Sarah in the chat. I do have a few questions for you. Sarah, do you have any recommendations for tools or tips on how to find the right outlets or media to pitch your book to?
Ooh, that's a hard one. There are a lot of fancy PR tools that are very expensive. You don't necessarily need to have one, but if you wanted to go, I would say start with the good old fashioned Google, go in and start putting topics that are relevant in there and see who's covering it. I've not actually used this trick, but I bet ChatGPT or other AI tools might be appropriate for this as well. Just asking it questions like what media sources or outlets cover, whatever the topic is. So that's one.
Yeah, I was thinking that too. I'm like, I feel like ChatGPT could be helpful in finding some good outlets. But when you were writing your book or when you're pitching it, like, do you have a recommendation of the right time to start your PR efforts?
Yeah. So this is going to sound crazy, but traditional publishers. So these are the people who, by the way, when I publicized books, I publicized self-published books, traditionally published books, hybrid published books. Sometimes some of my self-published books, I was like, this is amazing, the spot that you just landed, Boston Globe, Washington Post. And like, there were some things there that, were just cool how they all came together. Now, as you know, for anybody on this webinar, if you're working in self-publishing, a lot of these things you're doing on your own. So, you're the one doing all the work here, but traditional publishers, if you are on their A list of authors, they're going to put resources behind publicizing your book. And they typically start a year ahead of time, especially if it's a big name and a recognizable name. Now, if you are on their B or C list, they may put a weekend of effort 3 to 4 months ahead of time. Just send out some courtesy review copies to people they know in the industry. So, just because a book is traditionally published doesn't mean it's getting all the same love that all the traditionally published books are getting. But if they're starting a year ahead of time, there's nothing that should stop you from starting ahead of time. Also, the problem a lot of times is you're not ready to do it. You don't have your book ready. It's not edited. You're not ready to send out review copies. But if your timeline is elongated and you've been working on this book for a long time, it's already gone through a round of editing, you have what could be considered an advanced review copy, you could start 6 to 12 months ahead of time. And little shameless Lulu plug here, because of the way that our system works, you can also upload that advanced review copy to generate advanced review copy print versions and create a special cover for it that just is like, this is the advanced review copy for, insert the title here. So, and then that project could just it could be retired later, but it's a great system to use for doing that.
Yeah, that's a good point. We always tell people start as early as you can with your audience research, and then the more work you've done up front, then hopefully it'll help you identify the right outlets or influencers or podcasts that you can reach out to. All right. So I will say Tom dropped in the Q&A tab a great prompt that he put into ChatGPT to help him with some of this information or with some PR efforts. So definitely check that out. Thank you for sharing that, Tom. And I will say at CEX, someone was talking about ChatGPT, and if you talk to it like a person, then you get better results. And that has lingered in my mind and sort of scares me a little bit, but hey, might work for you, some help there. Yeah. So thank you, Tom. All right, Nick is asking, what's the best way to keep all this information? So maybe your outreach efforts and the responses you're getting. Is a simple spreadsheet the best way, or do you have any other insights on that?
Yeah, that's a personal choice. I like a spreadsheet, and I'm not even like super tech savvy. I just like if you use Google Docs, a Google Doc spreadsheet is nice because you can add notes in it. I do like a spreadsheet, because then you can keep track of like who you've sent copies to when you follow it up and adjust it out. That's my favorite way. Yeah.
Don't overcomplicate. I mean, the spreadsheet classic, great way to keep things in line. All right. The next question is coming from Mick. They're asking, is there anything specific that would be different depending on if the book is fiction or nonfiction? For example, something that works well for fiction, but not so much for nonfiction.
Yeah, fiction. So for fiction, the best proof is social proof. And I'm not talking about social media. I'm talking about reviews and what others are saying about it, what it gave to them. So when you have reviewers who are reading your fiction book, whatever they say about it, they're like, it made me think about my childhood, or whatever that was the joyful, emotive, thoughtful experience that they got out of that. That's what you're going to stick to, because you're going to have to take that experience and translate it to others and tell them this is what you're going to get from this. So with nonfiction, you're really promoting expertise. And if you are an expert in your field, it's going to be for people who need a problem solved. So like if you're solving a problem for them, maybe that's, something along the lines of self-help or fixing your bicycle, whatever it is, you're solving a problem for them. And that's the crux of the value there. But the value in fiction is going to be that entertainment value.
And Lolly has entered the chat and said you can also use Twitter/X list to find media contacts. So thank you, Lolly. All right. And thank you for that question, Mick. David is asking, what can I do now for my book? I published through Lulu several years ago. So I've heard you mention, I think this was the Electoral College example where the gentleman published it and then several years later. I don't know if you can capture lightning in a bottle twice, but what would your advice be for a book that's been out there for a little
bit? Chelsea, that's a great way to say you're capturing lightning in a bottle twice. And I'll tell Chelsea what I was talking about. It was a book that I worked on, and the book was published, 2010. And it was during the election between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton, where the Electoral College and the popular vote wasn't winning for the same candidate. Well, that's happened, funny enough, 5 other times in history. And this person was a super duper expert on it. And he reached out. I mean, his book was already 6 years old. He reached out and landed interviews on MSNBC, CNBC, CNN. Like talking about historical ways this has happened and how it was dealt with and should it happen in the future, and every question under the sun about it. So it's easy to resurrect a book when it solves a problem. So fiction, it's a little bit different. For fiction, maybe this is going to be something that you create a second version. There is a lot of data that shows a second book is a good way to promote a first book. So if you are writing a second book about the same topic or series or whatever it is, it's going to kind of bring your first book along for the ride. So for that first book that's a few years old, maybe you want to write a revised edition. That could be like a re-release or a new release. And that does give it a little bit of a fresh tone, add a new cover to it and see what kind of traction you can get. So as a re-release, you might get more reviews about it. Who knows? But yeah, it's tough to take an old book. And, if you approach a PR firm or a marketing firm who specializes in books, they're going to be selective, and they might tell you, we can't do anything. Your book has already been out. It's too old. And they're being honest with you about it. I mean, it's hard to do that. So, that's basically the answer to that question.
Well, yeah. And I think at the InkersCon conference we were just at, they were talking a lot about changing covers and, like you said, kind of doing these revisions or re-releases. And yeah, I mean, nothing can boost your backlist like new front lists. So continuing to write can be helpful there too. But yeah, I mean, at Lulu, or one of the beautiful things about independent publishing or print on demand is you can make those changes and not pay revision fees, or, do these new editions or these new covers and then kind of see if that gets you the attention that you're looking for there. So thank you for those questions. All right, let's see. Tom is having his own webinar. He's having his own
I'm reading
masterclass
these
in the
notes now.
Q&A with his chat GPT that he's obviously bonded very well with. So maybe you should talk to it like a human.
Well, it's funny, Tom, something that you mentioned here that I just realized I forgot to put in the presentation. In the list of things that we're here, I'll skip back over to the slide to things that you need to include: the book cover, description, publication date, metadata, contact information, any advanced reviews, author bio. I don't know why I left that out there, but that's very important. And again, this is something about fiction that I want to mention. Sometimes for fiction, readers like to feel close to the author. And I'm not saying that like anything. They like, or maybe they like to be seen by the author is a better way to say that. So for instance, if you give the author a shout out on Twitter and they like it or repost it or something, I mean, that feels cool as a reader, that a book you read, the author saw you and gave you some attention. So when your readers do that, support it, repost it, share it, say thank you, interact with them. And it might be scary if you're an introverted author, but it's a great way to kind of build and get some momentum going with that.
Yeah. All right. And Alex is asking, are there any tools to help track media impressions, or is it just a matter of making your own list and checking daily?
There probably are tools. You're going to pay for them for media impressions. It depends on the platform and how it's put out. So I would say the toughest to track are going to be live interviews that are broadcast. These are radio interviews, TV interviews. TV is a little bit easier to track than radio, but because you only have the listener wide audience and that's all you know. For social media, engagement is a way to track it. And for online media, sometimes there are metrics that are supplied. Now, what you don't want to do is, if you write a byline article, if your book is included in a roundup of reviews for a publication, and this journalist or editor was nice enough to do this for you, they liked your book, you're done with it, do not beat them over the head for the next month and be like, what happened? Did I get any traction on this? That's a no-no. You don't want to do that. First of all, they're never going to do anything with your second book if you reach out to them, because it's not cool. So whatever you can see with general online metrics is probably going to be your best bet. Also, this is a great time to mention, none of this guarantees book sales, none of it. So the first question a lot of people have when they look to do anything related to PR is, how is this going to affect book sales? And there's no way really to understand how it affects it, other than if you don't do anything, I can guarantee that nothing will happen. So if you go out there and you're like, this is a great book, and you're just telling yourself that in your head over and over again, nothing's going to happen. You have to do something. Now, when at the beginning of this presentation, I was talking about what PR is and what it isn't. If you're doing social media advertisement, platform ads like Amazon ads or whatever, paying for SEO, that you should be able to see what's happening. You should be able to have tracking in place to see, clicks, traffic, are they getting to the place where they can buy, all of that. And if you're doing direct sales with Lulu and the traffic links back to your website, any analytics you have built in your website where you can see who's buying, you could even throw a how did you hear about me kind of thing in there. That's going to give you a lot of insights too. So just a little added benefit for direct sales.
Yeah, perfect. I was going to mention that as well. If you have that mechanism, then you can just ask, how did you hear about me? And kind of draw those correlations from there. And Stan made a great point. If you work with bloggers using a UTM code for online links, or offering exclusive promo codes during interviews, that's a great idea too. And I think Google has a free UTM tag creator. So if you just Google that, then you can find it. And then that just helps you identify where traffic is coming from to your website or to buy your book. And that can be really helpful as well. So thank you. All the geniuses came out for this webinar. So appreciate all this crowdsourced information that we're getting. We really appreciate it. All right. Christopher is asking, What about old books that are part of a series with a current release? Can't find an editor with compatible schedule or payment plan. Any referrals? So I'm thinking this is maybe sort of relevant to the other question that we got about what to do with an old book if you are trying to get PR. But if you have any other info or tips, then let's hear them, Sarah.
Yeah, I mean, it's old books that are part of a series with a current release. Some things that you can do there to get PR, focus on the new book. Mm-hmm. And then with that, if the new book is going to get some love, it's going to drag the old book along. And if you are, again, let's talk about the direct sales aspect of it. If you're getting some good media and on your one pager, your primary sales channel is your website. And so let's say a media outlet was kind enough to say, like, for more information about Sarah's book, go here. And they included your website, which, by the way, that's incredible, but you can't guarantee that that's going to happen. Again, no guarantees, no guarantee of sales. But if they included your website and it got back to your website, you could, with your new book sale offer, you could throw in a half off the first 2 books, or, any kind of traditional sales enticements to get people to look at the first book might work.
Perfect. All right. And Tamara's asking, my upcoming book is a follow-up to my memoir. Do you find follow-up books are harder to sell when you're trying to get PR coverage?
Well, Tamara, I mean, yes, they are. But I don't know. A follow-up book to a memoir, first of all, that means you've had a pretty incredible life. So if you've had 2 memoirs, can we be friends? But I don't know. That's a really tough one. I don't know. I think it's going to depend on the topic. Mm-hmm. So if there's something I'm just going to spitball here. If there's something in the first half of your life that led to significant, interesting things in the second half of your life, and this is the follow-up of it, I think it could be fine. I think you could go out there, just swing for the fences on that. But that might help the first one for sure. But I just don't have enough information to know what that would look like.
Yeah, but I'm wondering, if you have published a book and you did get some media coverage for it, can you use that as leverage when you're trying to secure PR for another book that you put out? I mean, I know that you mentioned putting your references, or you can say like as seen on, or things like that we see on websites. But from your experience, or do you have any insight into if this is your second round, and hopefully, as you said, you were very kind and weren't, psychotic and following up every hour to see if they want to pitch your book or not, or take it on. But can you say, hey, you interviewed me a couple of years ago. I've got a new book out. Is that kind of a good icebreaker the second time around?
Yeah, absolutely, Chelsea. Exactly what you're talking about. You do want to find a way without being, having it all over your one pager to show them that you've already had significant coverage. Now, I will say media does like exclusivity. So if you have had your story covered in 20 places and, one angle about your story. So let's get back to Tamara's example, like the first half of the first memoir that you've written, if that's what already been covered in lots of places, you're going to want to actually come out with a different angle and different pitch for the second half, because if the media sees that your pitch is one way and that it's already been covered everywhere, they may think, oh, well, the audience might not have an appetite for that. They've already read about that. It's kind of old news, and they may want to cover something new about it. So, there's a lot of it depends on to answer that.
Yeah, I said that it's not a memoir, but a follow-up based on the story of my memoir. So still gunning for the most interesting woman in the world, possibly, but on this webinar, probably. So, all right. And Kiffin is asking, would focusing on why for a follow-up be good for the PR content? So a life event that happened. So I think, and Kiffin, correct me if I'm wrong here, but maybe saying like, your why for writing the book, or here is what the catalyst was for me to write this book. Is that a good angle when approaching media outlets?
I'm focusing on why for a follow-up be good for PR content, a life event that happened. I I think I'm a little bit confused here. Chelsea, are you reading that as like, oh, you're telling the media contact why, or you're asking?
The way that I'm reading this, and then again, Kiffin, let us know if this is correct, but I'm reading it as, here is my book, and the reason that I wrote this was because insert, life event or catalyst that did that. So kind of giving, maybe going back to what you were talking about is like readers want to know you. Do PR outlets want to have that human element as well? Is that enticing?
Yes. Yeah, that background information. And Kevin was somewhat responding to, I think that, okay. So Kevin, if you were responding to Tamara, that's great. And Tamara, that was good information that you've already had 15 book signing and 5 TV appearances. That's actually really amazing. With that amount of coverage, I would think that a follow-up to your memoir would absolutely be meaningful to the media. But again, like keep in mind that whole appetite thing. You may not want to approach everybody that you approached before, but where would it be newsworthy is the question that you really want to ask yourself. But getting back to that question, Chelsea, focusing on the why for sure. Again, if you look back at that slide that had the questions about what you want to ask, another one that you can ask yourself, and you kind of have to think about it from the perspective of the media outlet, is what's in it for me? Mm-hmm. Like what's in it for me from the media outlet? Like they want their audience to be engaged with them. Why would they want to cover this? What's interesting about you or your book to this audience? And sometimes it doesn't have anything to do with the book. Sometimes it has everything to do with the author.
Help them help you. And I know Alex was saying in the chat, you were exactly right when we were pitching to podcasts. You have to let them, obviously they're looking for good content. They need readers, viewers, listeners, and all that. So how can you help them reach their goals? And that can be really helpful as well. All right, I will do a last call for questions as we're coming to the end of the hour. But as we wait for those to come in, Sarah, is there a time to stop PR? Once you have this book out, you're doing all the effort, you're doing all the things. When do you kind of call it quits, or do you just sort of kind of shift to the next one? What does that transition look like?
Yeah, that's a great question. And that's going to depend on everybody. Some people have it in them to do it for a long time. And others, if you're not having any fun with your book anymore and you've lost steam, it's okay to take a break. Now, what I mean is it's not okay to spend 1 week on it and I didn't get any responses. I'm done. Throw all the papers up against the wall. But what you need to do is maybe a couple months afterwards, take a break and revisit. When your book feels old, it might be old. So after you've been doing it for a year, and this isn't something that you want to do every day, but you could if you felt like it. Depends on your time, how much resources you want to involve in this. But I would say when your book's kind of stale in the market as far as the publication date or the topic, take a breather. And that might be a good time to start your next book.
Yeah, I think that is great advice. All right, let's see. Lynn, I'm not sure if this is a question yet, but I'm writing my second book. I wasted a lot of money with a self-publishing company. Hopefully it wasn't Lulu. This book is some of my first book in a Christian context. It is a memoir. I didn't realize at the time that they actually own my book. My question is, will I have a problem with that publishing company if I use part of that in my new book? Any thoughts there, Sarah?
Yeah, go back and read your terms and conditions. That's really the advice that I have for you on that. I'm sorry, Lynn. I hate that. I hear that story over and over again about people who are trapped in contracts they just don't want to be in. So, yeah.
Yeah, and that might be a good topic to explore in the future, is what to do when you get your rights back. We've had a lot of authors who have gone through this, and you get into a situation with a publishing company where for one reason or another it doesn't align or it doesn't work out the way that you want it to, and then you kind of end up back to square one. What do you do then, and how do you kind of correct the course, if you will? All right, everybody. Well, I don't know if we have any. Let's see. All right. Tamara, thank you for giving us a little bit more information there about your second book, and congratulations on both of those and the success that you have had.
Yeah, that's good, Tamara. I'm sorry you experienced, horrific trauma. Breaking cycles is a hot topic right now. That's a good one, absolutely. And your backstory there is very valuable. So definitely go through this exercise of writing down the pitches, the angles, the questions. You have something there.
Yeah, and a first for our webinar, we got a trophy in the chat. So Kiffin, I think, is awarding Tamara maybe the trophy. So all right, I don't see any other questions coming through. So I just want to thank everybody. Thank you so much for being so engaged in the conversation. Gold star to Tom for sharing all this Chat GPT insights. We appreciate that. And thanks to everybody so much for contributing. And thanks Tamara, for sharing your insights and your experience, and then being brave enough to put that into a book to help others who, may be going through that unfortunate experience as well. So thanks, everybody. We so appreciate all of your time and the conversation. Thank you, Sarah. I always enjoy talking to you and hearing from you. And this is such a great presentation. So again, I'm so appreciative of your time that you've decided to spend it with us today. So I will let everybody go. I hope you all have a wonderful Wednesday. I don't know what the next webinar will be, so drop it in the chat if you would like. We'll be sending out an email, a follow-up email with the links to the replay, and you'll also have an opportunity to fill out a survey. So if you have any ideas of what you want to hear next, then please let me know there. Thank you again, and thank you, Sarah. Any last thoughts, or do you want to do your little bulldog bark again?
I'll do the bulldog chant of the way.
Do you want to bark us out? No.
Yeah, I'll bark out. But before that, my last thought is put on thick skin to do all this, and don't take anything personally.
Yeah. A great note to end it on. A great note to end it on. I think you can actually apply that to a lot of areas of life. So, all right. Thank you so much again, Sarah. Appreciate you as always. Thanks, everybody. Have a wonderful Wednesday, and we'll see you on the next one. Bye, everybody.
Bye.